Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of Harlem Nights. I am one of your hosts, Lee Stamus, here as always with Mr. Peter Morrow.
Hello.
And Mr. Dave Petchy.
Oh.
So, oh, how the mighty have fallen. We start talking about episode 7, Manifest. So of course, this show is going to be a spoiler show. So we are going to be talking about things in detail. So if for some reason you haven't watched this episode, you probably want to turn off this podcast, go watch that episode, and then come back and try and participate in the conversation. So, so in episode 7, titled Manifest, we get a lot of Cottonmouth, a lot of Alfre Woodard's Councilman Mariah Dillard. We get a good bit of shades. We get some downright creepy, fully giving me the Wiggins kind of stuff from multiple characters. But the big thing is we get a lot of flashbacks of Cottonmouth's childhood, and as a byproduct, kind of Councilwoman Dillard's childhood as well, kind of fleshing out who they were as children and how they became what they became. So Peter, overall takeaways on this episode?
Overall, I actually enjoyed this one a lot because it really started to show you who the real players were, and who the real the real characters were. Because after this, I mean, yeah, everything changes. With Cottonmouth being taken out,
right.
by his cousin, it just pretty much lays it all out on the table for everyone. And I feel this is when the series really starts to pick up steam.
Okay.
It's been building a lot, and then this is kind of the it's the midpoint really, but it's that it's that point of no return.
Yeah. Let me let Dave mention his thoughts, and then maybe we'll come back to that. So, Dave, what are your overall takeaways from?
I totally thought that the episode 7, I just thought, I don't know, I didn't think it was too eventful. Cottonmouth died and that was it. I thought it was cool that we could see his backstory, but then again, why should I care if they're going to kill him off? I thought episode 8 was a lot more amazing, and I think it's kind of like, I wish we kind of had what we had in episode 8 like way earlier on. That's it. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I was sure if you're done. I guess I could see that point of view. We're going to wind up falling on opposite sides for 2 episodes tonight then. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing unfolds. So yeah, I thought episode 7 just kind of wrapped in like multiple elements of some of the nuances that we see going on throughout the show. So in particular, what's going on with Shades, right? In that he's kind of this he's kind of like a Rasputin kind of character. With a lot of the cast, he often isn't involved in things directly, but he was kind of always in somebody's ear. Kind of, and I felt he comes off, particularly this episode, I felt it was kind of a reveal that he was particularly manipulative, and he might just kind of, at the end of the day, I could see how there might be multiple kings falling around him, but yet he'll still be the one standing.
Since you're talking about Shades, I did do my research a little bit on the comic book series. Did you do some research too? Yeah, looks like you're nodding, so I was like,
yeah, I did a little. Luke Cage kind of feels a little like Game of Thrones, where there's like a bajillion different characters, like that he kind of tangentially comes into contact with over the years, and not a lot of them stick. So, but yeah, I have done some looking up.
Yeah, I researched Diamondback and Shades, or more so Willis Stryker, who we get to see a little bit more of in episode 8. And apparently, Diamondback, there's this other person, and then Shades. They're kind of a group. They're always like mentioned together in the comics. But I thought that was interesting that that they're actually the major players. And I couldn't find any information like online when I was looking for Shades. So I was going to do a little more research on that. And then I also I picked up my first Luke Cage comic book last week. And that was fairly interesting. It's the one by Gendy Tarkabas. I'm pretty sure I slaughtered his last name. Just to get a little bit more context for the TV show, and it was pretty good for me because there was one of the villains was named I think like Big Mariah or something like that, and Mariah is you know, that corrupt politician lady.
Right.
But
right.
I don't know if they're the same person or not. So because this person is like, she's like big, fat, and like beastly.
Right.
So I don't know if she's depicted of that character in comics or not.
Right. So Peter, you mentioned that you felt like this was the point in the show where things picked up, which I do want to swing back around to, because I feel like most people that I've spoken to who have watched the whole series already feel like it's a downhill run from about this point down to the end.
Huh. I don't see it. I honestly, because this is when this episode is when we really start to learn about Mariah Dillard. We get to learn about her through the flashbacks that are set to Cottonmouth, but I really think they're more about her than him. Overall, then we get to see we get Stryker shooting Luke Cage, and then it's just from there it's just rolling. To me, I thought it was just constant action, and suspense, more suspense than action, I should say.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. And in fact, go ahead.
And that's what I like, suspense. I like that. I like the slow burn, and I like the big payoff. And to me, this episode is kind of like that big payoff for the first 6. Because now we get to see Diamondback, and we don't know anything about him yet, and it's that, who is he? That I just found was really cool about this episode.
Right. So yeah, so again, there were a couple of reasons I was high on this episode, which I gave an 8.0 in the site's review. Again, Alfre Woodard, I've been talking about her kind of being on a ramp up from where she started at the beginning of the series and being more and more comfortable with this character. And then I feel like she just goes completely off, maybe I won't say an award-worthy performance, but definitely in a shocking performance that definitely stands out amongst what she's done in the other episodes. Sorry, of course, as soon as we start broadcasting, the tweet hammer starts. So I've got multiple devices with alerts going off. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of kind of nuanced dynamics to play. I referred to Shades. I kind of feel like he is the evil Sifu of the Luke Cage series. For those of you who have watched Marco Polo, and and it was a total script flip, right? In this episode, they take the main villain off the scene, and kind of leave us. And I think that was the most significant thing to me is at the end of this episode, we just have no idea where they might go with it, right? Because it's the path is wide open. They've removed any rails as far as things that would keep us heading in the direction that they were heading in. And it kind of makes the series feel fresh, right? Because like I said, you can kind of go anywhere that you want to. I really love the flashback episodes. I know Dave, you said you didn't care for that if they were going to be taking that character off the field, but like you said, Peter, I felt like even though we only momentarily experienced it for Cottonmouth, maybe those flashbacks are equally important in revealing what we now know about Mariah Dillard, and that will, and that'll be that'll return some value as we go on through the series. So, anything anybody else wants to mention about episode 7, Manifest?
Yeah, kind of.
No.
I just can't remember it now. Dang it, what was it? Crap. So, probably my favorite part about this episode is that, it in basically a couple scenes, it really sets up for the big fight at the end. Because you see Diamondback. You figure out that he's pretty personally involved. So at this point, I really got the sense that, okay, from now on, that's the guy that's going to be causing all the problems here. So after that, I was golden.
Yeah, and this is to what Pete keeps referring to, because I know it's hard for me to keep the time on straight, but what Pete's referring to is at the end of this episode, Luke gets shot by a sniper who I think we see a very brief camera shot of, who's apparently firing from inside a vehicle. At this point, his name has not. We don't know who he is in the car. No, that's fine. So the thing is, when I saw him, I just thought he was some random dude that had been. I just assumed he was some hitman that Shades had hired, or maybe even Cottonmouth had hired before he got killed. So
yeah, that's what I thought too. Exactly the same thing.
Right. Which is an excellent segue to us starting to talk about episode number 8.
Hold on though, because
go ahead.
About that, there was one point in an episode a couple episodes ago where Shades and Cottonmouth were talking, and Shades made it very clear that the only one that was going to kill Luke was Diamondback.
Yeah,
so
he absolutely.
When I saw that, I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, see, there's a point where Cottonmouth. There's that point where Cottonmouth calls Luke Cage and tells him that he knows that he's Carl Lucas and threatens to reveal his secret to all of Harlem. And Shades, and he tells Shades that, and Shades asks, did you scare him off? Is he going to rabbit? It makes it very clear that Diamondback does not want Luke Cage leaving. He wants him around. So that absolutely makes sense. So episode number 8, Blowing Up the Spot, starts with Luke laid out on the ground, having received what we will eventually find out is a Judas bullet to the gut. So let me first off, let me just go ahead and say that. So I was down on this episode, and this actually, for me, was a low point in the series since the premiere episode. I gave it a 6.0 score on the website, and mainly for me, it's because of how this thing ends. Right, that Stryker, who and it's a play into our later discussions of later episodes. Now, at this point, really, we only really get to see Diamondback interact with 2 people, and that's pretty much Luke Cage and Misty Knight. still at this point, I mean, I know he's Diamondback, but he still comes off kind of as just a lone hitman. And in the end scene, it was just really anticlimactic to find out that a lot of this thing is because, Luke's dad was also, that Luke and Diamondback were best friends, and Luke's dad was also the high school football coach. And despite the fact that Diamondback was a great quarterback, the guy always called his running plays because he wanted his son to be the one carrying the ball. I mean, the kind of grotesque simplification of like what is at the root cause of this relationship between the two of them was just very disappointing. And I know
I don't think that was it. I think there was something more, but I don't think it was revealed yet what it was.
No, it wasn't, and I get that, but my point is that in this scene, which as far as Diamondback is hoping theoretically, right, this is the final time he's going to see Luke Cage. He's about to kill him. This is the monologue that the script writers elect, right, to give us defining what is at the root of their conflict, and I just felt like it was very marginalizing, and just not very rewarding, right, for the end of this episode. Because of course, right, if you're piecing this thing out, what you assume is that Luke obviously can't. It's going to get pretty boring if Luke gets shot with a Judas bullet every single episode, right? So we're figuring at this point that he's going to suffer this injury. He's going to recover from it somehow. Maybe figure out how to beat it or avoid these bullets. And I'm thinking this is the low point that we're going to see Luke Cage, right? This is the most vulnerable that we're going to see him made. And like I said, it was just kind of a I don't know, childish monologue, I think, to round out like the conflict between these two characters. I don't know. What do you guys think?
So overall, I was not as down on this episode as you were. I always seem to be the positive one. Because I felt like this was a good wrap-up episode. So much happened in the episode before. So many things had to change because of what happened in the previous episode with Luke getting shot initially, finding out he's no longer invulnerable, Cottonmouth dying, Dillard killing him. All these pieces, if they didn't have this episode to really kind of wrap things up, I think the rest of the series would have suffered, honestly. So, yeah, not a whole lot of action happened. It wasn't very suspenseful, but you started to see, you really started to see the depth of Dillard's nature, in here, because she's able to really quite nicely just claim that Luke did it. And I mean, some of this other stuff comes into play much later in the series, but the things that happen in here kind of set the stage for what's going to happen later. So yeah, it wasn't as cool an episode, especially considering the last one, but I think it was definitely a necessary episode.
Okay, cool. What about you, Dave?
I kind of agree with Peter in that it was a lot about connecting the dots. It kind of made it important that we found out that Luke was framed by Diamondback. That's the whole reason he was sent into prison. And it also clarified like how Shay's got all of his information on Luke Cage, and so all of that was coming from Diamondback. Diamondback, we know he wasn't responsible for Reva's death. It wasn't like super clear what their relationship was. My understanding was Luke Cage must have gone on to do something in his life, whereas Willis Diamondback was left to fend on the streets and got into crime. I don't know what the initial, incident was, but that's kind of my feel of, Willis was jealous of Carl or Luke Cage. I agree with you though in aspects where I feel this episode was better, but it wasn't great. I do agree that Diamondback's monologue was kind of weak. That whole conversation of them finding it out, and the whole thing about how Diamondback just kind of walked away at the end of the fight was very anticlimactic. Nothing like I'm going to go kill everybody you love or anything like that. It was just, he just kind of disappeared.
Right. And, and I mean, and I get like, there's more going on than just like the football rivalry, right? But still, even as we go forward in the series, at the end of the day, it's just jealousy, right? It's the kind of thing that like people get over every day. And granted, yeah, there's some people who get really wrapped around the axle about it. They do some really like, psychopathic and sociopathic things, but it's just, here, I guess my thing is, and I think the turn for me is, I want a lot out of this show. And I definitely, as the show has eked its way forward in terms of quality with each episode, my expectations definitely get higher, right? So my expectations of it at this stage in the series are higher than they were at the first. And I feel like your core conflicts between your hero and your villain have got to be something more than one of like the standard 8 Hollywood plots, right?
Yeah, I know. Like just simple jealousy issues.
Right. Except I mean, and really at this point, just looking at notes from my review, really at this point I felt like he's just a meaner Cottonmouth, right? he really, at this point, he really doesn't bring anything more to the table other than that he is more, whereas Cottonmouth was about money, like, Stryker likes money, but at the end of the day, he's really about just inflicting pain on people. So he's a little more psychotic, but he's really not that much more of a stretch beyond Cottonmouth. And so I was just kind of disappointed with him at this point in the run. Some things I did like from this episode, I love the interrogation scene between Claire and Misty. Where she just keeps like, where Claire just keeps kind of poking at Misty, and like, there's nothing like the very easy bob and weave that you can perform on a maniacal authority figure to get them to just snap. So, and I love seeing her execute that in this episode. Anything from this episode that you guys particularly enjoyed and would call a standout?
One thing that I did pick up, I don't know if this was a foreshadow or not, but Claire mentioned like, if you get into any like legal trouble, I know a guy, and I just feel like they're setting up like the most perfect like Daredevil tie-in, with Luke having all these charges, and who else is going to be like perfect to clear up his name, than Matt Murdock. So I hope they didn't just throw that out there to tease us. I really do hope because we know Luke Cage has met Jessica, but we haven't seen Luke Cage meet Matt Murdock yet, Daredevil. So I'm really hoping that this whole wrap up introduces that crossover.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I kind of feel like, I think I mentioned it before, the quintessential problem with Luke Cage for me is that this is a show that could have been filmed in the 70s or 80s, right? Because he doesn't have a power set that really requires tons of wire work, or you certainly don't need industrial light and magic in here, right? Pulling off special effects. He's just a really strong dude who's bulletproof, and I mean, really, he's like the greatest American hero with an even smaller power set, right? So he can. The show can get boring very quickly, and in fact, to a certain extent, it has in terms of its action sequences. Like I realized a few episodes ago, I'm like, I can't really expect anything more from this in terms of like Marvel superhero antics, right? So yeah, I kind of feel like it's almost essential to have somebody else from the Marvel universe come in just to strike that chord of continuity and it's all related, right? To keep brandishing that stick. So,
speaking of it's all related, though, that lawyer looks really familiar.
which one?
He wasn't
Candy's
Fisk's lawyer, was he?
I think so.
Or which lawyer?
Stokes' attorney, who came in to defend Candy.
Oh yeah. So he's been there since Stokes got arrested, since before, really.
Yeah, right. But he just looks really familiar outside of this series.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll definitely have to research that. He doesn't spring to my mind from anywhere. But again, I haven't watched all of the Netflix stuff.
Yeah. And I think before we go, end this here, I think it's important to note that this is the first time at the very end of the episode where we get a pretty good idea that Stryker and Luke are more than just friends. That basically right before he shoots him, right? I am your brother.
Right. So that was actually at the end of episode 7.
No, I was pretty sure it's the end of episode 8.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Episode 7, he's sniping. But how's he only speaking of sniping? Look, I get that a calibrated rifle, high-powered rifle, is only accurate to a certain range, but I'm pretty sure a point blank is going to be a hard to miss shot. So did he mean to only shoot Luke in the shoulder?
Oh yeah,
yes.
I think so too. I think he wants Luke to suffer before he kills him.
Right.
Okay. That was my last thought on this episode, because it didn't kind of click with me, that part.
Right. All right. Well, good talk. I really don't have much more to say about these. For me, episode 8 was all about the female cast members, like Simone Messick's performance, Alfre Woodard, Rosario Dawson, and I'm not sure her name, but the woman who plays the inspector from Internal Affairs, Priscilla. I felt like all of the scenes with them, and I said with Mariah, are much more interesting than the interaction between Luke and Diamondback. So, away we go for episodes 9 and 10. We'll be back next week to talk those. In the meantime, if you want to catch up with the online antics of Mr. Peter Marr, you can catch him at Edgerton_Taro on Twitter. If you're trying to catch up with Dave's content, you can find him at Comic Book Guy 90, and you can track all my stuff at Agassically Famous. That's one word, 2 S's in the middle, also on Twitter. So thanks so much for joining in. We are signing off, and we will be back momentarily to talk the GWW Weekly, where we'll just have our general fireside chat about whatever kind of geek stuff we're into. Nerdy, unscripted. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining in. We are out.